Hi, Anand here. So this episode, I'm going to try a new format, completely different. And I thought I will have a little Q&A session, or maybe we can call this new series Ask Anand V Show, in homage to one of my marketing role models, Gary Vaynerchuk. And so what I've done is I've crowdsourced or put out a question to all the employees internally at the entire Blue Rhine General Trading Group in all the countries to ask me questions, either about the industry, about work within the company, issues, feedback, appraisal, and anything they would like to ask me directly. So we got a very good response in a space of like 12 hours or 24 hours. We got about 90 questions. And I categorize them into different 2-3 categories. Obviously, there's the topics related to the industry, towards the market, external factors, and then the second category is the personal questions. And I'm going to address all of this now to the people who put it forward, and also keep it open to others who might be interested in hearing what's happening at Blue Rhine and our future goals from a sales and product management point of view. And obviously there are many internal topics also which we will address in our quarterly live stream, which hopefully we can start doing. So I want to make this at least a quarterly or a regular occurrence. So in the future we will also put out the forms to our customers and viewers of the show to ask me and put forward any questions, especially related to the sign industry, signage, anything to do with signage or printing, that I hopefully can answer and hopefully can give a valuable point of view that you might find interesting or useful. So let's get started straight away. So first question, little easy one, so to get things going. Hi sir, the questioner asks, hi sir, good day. Is it possible to add Arabic language in our online store? So it's a very good question because many of the countries we are active in now, obviously in the GCC, are predominantly Arabic speaking. It is on the horizon to put in the Arabic language. One reason we have not prioritized it is because of feedback I have received from and seen personally with many first language Arabic speakers, is that when they use their mobile devices or browsers, they already have extensions built in. They use standard Chrome extensions which auto translate the existing website. So like our website, I've seen users who are first language Arabic speakers. If they go to our website, it automatically translates everything. So this kind of eliminates the need to go through all 2,000 pages one by one, which is right now quite a significant task for us with a small team to do that. But it is definitely on the horizon once development is ongoing, and we will hope to change that in the future. So maybe in a year or so we can see that added, but right now it's a bit constrained in terms of our resources and skills to do that for so many pages. So it's a good question, but I think you will find that most Arabic language speakers do auto translate on their Chrome browsers to access websites. I do that if I end up at a German site or a Dutch site of a company and I can't read anything. The Chrome browser allows me to translate all the information directly. Second question, any future plan to open a new branch in Ethiopia? No future plans to open in Ethiopia. It's interesting why that country of all the countries, but right now no. But we have obviously a goal a few years ago is to create our footprint in the GCC. That is created now, but obviously some of those branches are newer than the others. For example, Qatar and Kuwait is just approaching 4 years. Bahrain is just over a year. So obviously they're still relatively young in their life and would need a lot more focus and investment to grow and solidify their position in the market. So that will be the immediate focus. But in terms of outside the GCC, when we look at the data, we see like the most number of visitors to our websites are the second most after the GCC countries or the UAE is India. So that seems a natural place to go based on the data and interest, where we already might be able to attract new customers. So that's a natural place, but no plans in the immediate future. We are, however, opening up the site now, and it's kind of opened up already to accept our first international customers for global shipping. So this is already started, and we will be ramping it up in the coming weeks and months. Then, what's your vision, and where do you see the e-store in the next 5 years? So generally, I like to think of things in 5-10 year time frames, and I don't want to really get into it because definitely there are aspirations in terms of turnover growth, size, categories, which is far more than what we are doing today, and they tend to seem, those ideas also tend to seem sometimes too unrealistic and maybe unlikely also. And I might sound crazy if I start saying them out loud. So I prefer, and especially on a day-to-day, to focus on the short-term steps, like as I mentioned about gradually opening up to global shipping, investing in changing the UI, improving the technical infrastructure behind the site. We are doing investments in the short term, in the next few months, to totally upgrade our ERP system so customers will have better access to the stocks which are available locally, and hopefully integrate even third-party shipping so they can get even quicker deliveries if they're not located very close to our branches. So I prefer that myself and the team really focus on these steps, these small incremental steps, because otherwise, and I've done in the past where you get caught up in too many dreams and things and nothing happens, and maybe even I get carried away with that, and you don't focus on those incremental steps, which is essential for the future goals. But hopefully, a lot more customers, a lot more turnover, and many categories. Something I've missed out also is third-party sellers. Our website is able to have third-party sellers. Even our competitors can list their products on our site, and we would just get a referral fee depending on where the stock is located and if we service it. And we just are about to sign our first few resellers, which will be also announced in the coming weeks. So hopefully a lot more resellers also on our website who will be able to access our database of customers and generate sales, and we can provide essentially more selection and better prices to our customers in the long run. So these are all the incremental steps we want to take on, and obviously this has to happen in all of these 6 countries. So that's why it's very important we focus on incremental steps to reach 5-year and 10-year goals. And what happens, I've realized even over the years, is as we do these incremental steps, we might find totally new areas that that are interesting to get into. So that could open whole new possibilities which would maybe divert from the original plan. Next question. When will you be the company's CEO? Oh, that's the personal section, sorry. We'll go back to that. Do you think the COVID-19 or Corona will affect our sales this year? For sure, it is already affecting our sales and is drastically affecting many of our customers, especially in the events, exhibition space. They are immediately impacted. It's difficult for me to predict about, how it is going to progress in terms of the Corona spreading, throughout the countries. But Overall, for the company, I feel, yes, some segments are definitely going to hit, which is exhibition and events. We get a significant amount of business from there. But as a company, we are also active, obviously, in other areas, whether it be digital printing, whether it be for branding, whether it be signage, whether it be construction projects, interior projects, lighting projects, LED screen projects, digital signage projects. So there are many different areas we can get a healthy business from it. So it's very important we focus on the things that are in our control and just monitor the situation with things which are out of our control, namely Corona. So, but at the same time, we're experiencing very good growth in markets like Saudi Arabia, in markets like Oman, Qatar, Kuwait, and Bahrain. So overall, I think the picture is quite positive for us if things don't get drastically out of hand in the next few months related to Corona. What is your e-com development plans? I talked about that a little bit. So I'll just skip through some of the, so obviously I mentioned the internal things we will address. I want to focus on the personal and external topics here. Where do you see BRGT in the coming 5 years? Are you planning to expand outside the GCC? Like I said, definitely we are interested, but once we really evolve our e-commerce offering, it would make sense to leverage that in new markets when we go outside. A lot of personal questions, so we'll come back at 2. This comes up a bit external. Can you address how to achieve work-life balance? So this is definitely very important, and I think it's unfair whether you're in this company or any other company or you move on to a different company. Work-life balance is something that is unique to an individual. I have experienced this myself, and I feel that people who do have a good harmony with work and life generally try to figure out what are the areas that they are that are important to them, whether it be time with the family, exercise, well-being, rest, sleep, and then the other side of work, what parts are important, what time, what place in your career you are at. Because something very important to remember is that it's only early on in your career are you able to sometimes put in a lot of extra work, learn a lot, pick up a lot. And usually what I've seen is over a period, most people don't need to sustain that extra hours and extra work throughout their career. Once you do that for a significant period of time, maybe it might be a 2-year period, maybe it's a 5-year period, depending on what you're trying to achieve in your career. Later on, you would be able to do a lot of those tasks much easier. You would probably even have resources or people who report to you where you can delegate a lot of that work. So it's really up to the individual. I don't think a company can really play a big role in that. You have to really decide what is important for you and what you're going to prioritize. Let's see. Any plans for opening branches in Africa, Egypt? Not as of now. Not as of now. What do you feel is the biggest strength of our company right now? Few things. Our network in the GCC, the number of complementary product categories we have. So everything from traditional signage products right up to the evolving and growing digital signage products. And even though I say these are evolving, even traditional sign is growing quite a bit. And so I think the time and the number of people who have really learned a lot in this industry over the 2+ decades in this company and our involvement in this industry, we have so much knowledge, like collective knowledge of our business and our customers and our suppliers, that collectively within this industry, somebody in this company or multiple people in this company know how to solve almost every problem. Obviously, if it's unrelated to our industry, it's a different thing, but that is definitely one of our biggest strengths, I think, in this industry, the collective knowledge of a big group of people across many countries and many even micro regions, whether that may be, Alain or Mabella or Sohar or Khamis Mushet. We have geographically a lot of knowledge. We have products-wise a lot of knowledge. So, and this is all down to the people. So that is definitely our biggest strength. The people who bring all this collective knowledge and are keep improving themselves also, which shows in our continuous growth over the 2+ decades. Okay, industry related. What do we prefer? Machinery trading or material trading? There is no preference for one or the other. Both really go hand in hand. For sure, the material trading has a shorter sales cycle for materials, because somebody wants to execute a job, he's going to buy it today or within the same week, most of the time. Somebody is going to invest in new equipment. Depending on the size of the investment, he might take a few weeks to sometimes over a year. So they are totally different, but most of our products and the equipment we sell really go hand in hand. And I think, and I know that being involved in the equipment business for almost close to 10 years, starting with CNCs and lasers, now up to fibers and printers, has given us a very good understanding of the available technologies that can be leveraged, the latest technologies that customers can use, how they can save money with different technologies, and also how it is compatible with so many different products that we sell, because many of them, like I said, go hand in hand. So there's no preference as such, but both are very interesting and in different ways, and have their own pros and cons. But I think both are essential for our long-term strategy. Okay, this is an interesting one. Companies are offering 12, so the question is saying basically our competitors are offering 12 to 36 months of installments on printers and lasers. How do we care for off-machine sales? This is also partly an internal question, but it's a very important question and a valid question for people listening. Yes, there are people who do offer very long credit terms. We do offer a lot of financing. I mean, it's just that we don't say yes to every financing deal. It has to be a win-win situation for both parties first and foremost, because we can't just say yes to every financing deal. But in our industry, in our categories, we are definitely the most offering the most financing. That I can be certain of. And the reason we don't say yes to everything is because we know that 80% of our equipment range that we sell does not have a very high investment size compared to the return on investment. Now, for example, today you can buy a laser machine. It was brought up here. A laser machine costs somewhere in the range of $16,000 today. As a business, if you are buying a laser machine for $16,000 and you cannot generate $16,000 in profit over a period of, say, 6 months, 7 months, which is a reasonable time frame of financing, should you really be buying that machine? And again, if you don't foresee that kind of business, maybe you shouldn't transfer that risk onto your supplier and take that onus on. So this is something that us as sales, in our sales organization, we have to think about. This is something also the buyers have to think about. We have, of course, in cases also given longer term financing, but this is also like specifically based on the credit history and credit worthiness of the customer. So depending on the investment size, we have to do our due diligence, and that could be looking at bank statements of the customer, looking at their financials, which is a due diligence process, which is a standard procedure across the entire finance industry. As an individual or as a business, nobody gets a loan from any bank or financing institute without showing their credit history, showing these financials, showing documents. So even for 100,000 dirhams loan. So why would, as a business, we avoid all these due diligence checks? It is just irresponsible actually to do it. Anybody to do it, whether it's us as a supplier or a customer doing it for something, it is just irresponsible to do it. And so we do, like I said, we do financing, but we do need to see. Go through some checks to make sure the customer can afford that kind of financing, pay it on time, and so like I said, so it's a win-win for everybody. And another thing is when competitors offer 12 to 36 months of financing, something that really gets overlooked, and especially the way this question is framed, is we're not talking about the same apple and a red apple and the competitor is selling a red apple. We're talking about probably two different products which have very different value. So, a certain example of our machine cost is 250,000 as just a random example, and the competitor is giving on paper it's a printer of the same size, 3.2, for 240 with 18 months, and we are saying only 6 months with a 50% advance. What really gets missed out is a lot of focus from the customer, and maybe our team member goes into that payment term, but what is inside that machine? So I've seen examples like that where we are at 250 and asking for a lot of money up front and money within a short time frame, but like we have maybe 6 heads in the machine, 6 dedicated print heads, which obviously costs a lot more than the person offering a machine for 240 with only 2 print heads with two channels. So you can imagine the cost difference for us and for him. And so what is really our margin in this? So, and he might be overloading his margin to justify these things. So this this is something that we have to benchmark our product a lot with the competitor before we just focus on just what is the price, the financing terms, because we are trying a lot. I know our product management team trying a lot to provide the maximum value at a price that is affordable and that is a win-win for the customer and for us. Because at the end of the day, whether it's us or any other supplier, you're not going to be their supplier for long if you're not having a healthy margin that will justify maintaining the machine, providing ongoing support, and just be there whenever they need them. And with all these products, these 99% of the products we sell also, they are highly competitive. So we are unable to also charge more than industry norms in terms of margins. All right. What is the next big step the company is going to undertake in the market to be more competitive? Any new ventures in the pipeline? No new ventures, but obviously through e-com we want to continue to add more value. We want to figure out how to lower our prices for our customers more. We are working on a lot of things for that, and I don't want to give anything away in that regard right now, but hopefully we will be able to significantly reduce our prices in the coming months. Okay. how did you start? Okay, how did you start your journey with Blue Rhine? I might as well address it here. And how did I start my journey? So I graduated in 2006 May with a degree in finance and accounting from Emory University in Atlanta, Georgia. Look for a job. I struggled to find a job. Luckily, my parents had already started this company about 10 years prior, and they wanted to start a branch in India at the time. This was in 2000. I graduated in 2006. 2007, I was all up for it. Kind of after spending 4 years in America, I was looking for definitely a new change also. And India, obviously being Indian, and I'd never lived in India except for going for vacations and going to visit family. So this was super exciting. I took it on. I went there, we started the company, just 2 people at first, eventually grew at most to about 5 people. But it was really tough, and it was essentially a failure. We did end up selling the company, but not really for a profit. But we were trying to do the same business model, but due to in India, just especially at that time, was very different from what it is today. A lot of red tapeism, bureaucracy, and unless you're really, really familiar with how to navigate that system at that time, it was very difficult for a new entrant, especially when your core business is importing these products from all across the world and storing them and trying to sell them through different parts of India, which, for example, if we had a order sent at our warehouses in Lal Bagh Road, Bangalore, and if we had a order in Mumbai, I don't know, there's at least 3 borders before it reaches Mumbai, and then within Mumbai you have even these different zones, so maybe you count 5. So every time till he reaches the customer, so every time the truck crosses one border, he might not make it across. He might get stopped. There might be delays, paperwork issues, but it was very difficult to navigate. So like this, there were hundreds and hundreds of problems which I was definitely inequipped to handle. And so eventually we sold the company. I moved to Dubai in 2009 May to work as a product manager. Did online store affect our walk-in customers? So definitely not. When we talk about walk-in customers, we're talking about customers, yes, who you can imagine come walking into the store. But a lot of these walk-in customers are now placing those orders before they come to the store and picking it up, or by physically coming and collecting it, or even taking advantage of the deliveries. So when we talk about walk-in customers, these are customers obviously who come and pay cash, and obviously the number one USP of our online store is lower prices for cash. And we have definitely benefited, and our customers have benefited from higher sales on cash. Our customers have benefited from lower prices on cash. So, and this is overall healthy. And as a company that buys and sells material, having net positive cash flow is super important. Free cash flow is super important for the health of the business, health of the longevity, health of if we don't pay our suppliers on time, if we don't meet our expenses on time, things can go haywire pretty fast. So this has been definitely a very positive outcome of one of the positive outcomes of the e-com store. And that's why we've been putting a lot more emphasis to get more customers onboarded for taking advantage of these cash prices using their credit card or cash on delivery. External. So again, a credit customer, why are we not thinking for credit terms for machine customers if they're potential and reliable. We, like I said, again, we want to give it if they have good potential and reliability, but this has to be, this has to be demonstrated either through historical transactions or, like I said, bank statements or financials, which is an industry norm. I can't get a loan for 50,000 dirhams or 10,000 dirhams without showing my credit history. So if somebody else is doing that, that is a very high risk transaction. And I think we should really think in terms of sensible business and how to hand out credit, because especially Dubai, unfortunately, sometimes has a very bad reputation in terms of credit worthiness of some people, or even people taking advantage of easily available credit. There's been a lot of, you just have to look around. Everybody has a story or 5 stories about bad situations when it comes to handing out credit sometimes without proper due diligence. So due diligence is very important. We want our people who are trying to close these deals to do that due diligence for us and bring those potential deals and present it in such a way. And then we would offer those credit terms. What is the long-term vision? I think this comes up again. This is the last page, right? I think I'll come back to that. Then personal. How are we sure we'll always win as the industry changes? It's how are we sure we'll always... To be honest, we're not always sure. But one thing I know is that we are always very proactive. And if we do not stay proactive instead of reactive, then we will not win. Because at least if we are proactive, and at least if we are making mistakes and learning from mistakes and then being proactive to correct those mistakes, we will be on top of things. The decline for most companies happens when they get comfortable. You have to keep in mind, Blue Rhine was at one point, 24 years ago, a company that entered into these product categories that were already existing Goliaths and industry leaders. And as things evolve, we notice certain gaps here and there. Being proactive, that is what led to the growth and healthy business we see throughout the region, and we have to continue saying that. That is something that every person has to really be conscious of. Being proactive, thinking of the company as if it is still in the early stages, thinking as if the Amazon business culture has a very good term for this, call it the day one philosophy. So you're always operating like the business is on day one. So because on day one you're just surviving, or you're just fighting for survival and fighting to fix things, resolve things, that mind space that people are in when a business is in the early stage or in day one is, and if that can be carried on throughout, is what leads to innovation and continuously winning in the industry, even with changes, and being able to adapt very quickly. So I'm sure we'll always win if we stay like that. So, but I'm not sure we'll always win. But it's a tough question, but I hope I answered it. What else we see here? So next question is, how do you drive change in the organization? I can mainly speak from my perspective of sales and product management. It goes back to something I mentioned earlier. It has to happen incrementally. Big change is difficult for anybody. It doesn't matter who they are. Drastic changes can really put a lot of breaks into the operations, put a lot of difficulties into the operation. and it has to be sort of planned out and incrementally changed. People talk a lot about change management, but managing it is a bit difficult unless you're really, really experienced at it. So from my perspective, in my areas of purview, I would say incrementally and as easily as people can adopt them. There's a little personal questions. Please stop wearing that red full sleeves t-shirt. Okay. How do you plan on, that's an internal question. Okay. Which is the year Blue Rhine commenced their journey in the Middle East? And what was the circumstances we suffered to bring Blue Rhine to such an unbeatable state? Like I mentioned earlier, it is not unbeatable. It is definitely not unbeatable. Anybody can beat us the same way we were able to beat some people in the early days. People are constantly, it's just the nature of a competitive capitalist economy. That is what, it doesn't matter whether it's Blue Rhine or somebody else in a small position or bigger position, different industry. People are out to beat. It's business, and like in sports, the winner is the one with the maximum points. So it's all in good fun, doesn't hurt anybody, but it is not unbeatable, and we got to stay on it. So when did we commence? Getting back to the main part of the question, the company started in 1996. My parents moved here from Nigeria in 1995 at the end. They started this company then. My father used to work in the chemical industry, specifically water treatment chemicals. They used to sell to water treatment plants. He started here. He was trying many different ventures. He really struggled in those early days from 96 to like 2000 almost, you could say, trying different ventures in chemicals, pharmaceuticals, jute bags, soda, a lot more. He tried teak through his contacts in Africa, and it was all just very tough. Obviously, like any companies, like most companies trying to start off, he struggled a lot in those early days. Unfortunately, around 1998, he met with our current CEO and my boss, Mr. Mani, and since then they started like with one product and kept on adding many more complementary products. So 96 we started. How do you enjoy communication? Email or direct? How do you best enjoy communication? Both, actually. I don't like email over direct communication. It's really both have different ways of using them. I definitely like writing out emails, because sometimes when you want to talk about certain serious topics, like say a product strategy or important direction that we need to take, just even more than the communication, for me to help my thought process of putting that into a cohesive points which make sense, which anybody can understand, which is simple to read. Just putting it down and writing helps me formalize my thought process and come up also with a better way of thinking it. And usually I would have to also directly communicate those points on a regular basis. So doing both sometimes for big topics helps a lot. For other things related to maybe direct reports, things that are on their mind or on my mind, definitely direct communication is critical there when it comes to dealing with different topics with direct reports, and that's either myself or from them. Direct is always good in that situation. This is an interesting one, going back to sales. We need product specification from our principals and brands, like the other brands in the market, like, product specification happens, even those other competitor brands. People are going out and doing that, and did that in the past. And that is a big part of our role with representation of these brands, and that is also the expectation of these principles that we do that, and that is the understanding we have. So we don't really have much role to play if we are not going to go out and do that. And fortunately, we have made significant progress in that regard, especially in the last few years, which is very evident. And there are a couple of people who are obviously more experienced in that just from practice and going out and doing it on the regular. And this is something we expect the juniors also to observe, learn, and develop their own skills in terms of doing that. So this is something that is very important that we as especially on the sales and product management side take on. And this is our responsibility, and we should do it. And we're obviously looking for people who can take on those challenges and do it and learn the process of going about it. And there are now enough people to provide the kind of guidance to execute on those ideas, on those specifications. All right, let's get to the personal section and the personal questions to me. So what is one business challenge you had to overcome and would never forget about? A few years ago, there was a challenge where there was a huge shortage in acrylic. Obviously, is one of our core products, and there's a huge shortage. Actually, this is around the time of, I want to say, 2012 or something. And at that time, flat screen TVs were just, the demand of flat screen TVs were going like this. And some reason at the time, they needed as one component in it like acrylic. And there was no acrylic to buy in the world. And obviously we didn't have acrylic, and everyone was looking to me to solve that problem. And that was a tough situation where we went and bought a lot of acrylic, thinking that people would buy it when we got it. But what happened was, once it came in, there was a lot of acrylic, like a lot of containers of acrylic that customers were not willing to change from our existing brands, and the sales team found it very difficult to sell. That was there was a lot of pressure to do something about it. I did do it. It was a huge mistake. It cost the company a lot of money over in that period, and that was a big loss. So I won't forget about that. And it kind of, what I learned from it was to not succumb to. I knew the right thing to do was not to buy that, but I succumbed to the external pressure, and I did not trust myself enough at the time to say no. We're just going to ride it out, because eventually by the time all this acrylic came, there was enough acrylic to buy. Those flat screen TVs didn't need that acrylic component anymore. They changed the technology, went from whatever, they found some better way and cheaper way of making it, and there was more acrylic than anybody ever needed suddenly. So my gut instinct at the time was to not succumb to that external pressure, but I did, and it cost us a lot of money, and I won't forget that, because all right. Do you like to behave like a strict boss or a friendly boss? This you have to ask the people around me, but I think I like to behave like a friendly boss. I'm not. There have been occasions where definitely I have lost it. Maybe I've regretted it, or not lost it, but been strict. But I guess after a certain amount of time of being friendly, maybe, if somebody, if I just feel frustrated about it, maybe I just became strict. So definitely more friendly than strict, but again, you have to ask the people who work with me. Right next to it, another question, feedback, really good to work with you. So I guess some people say it's okay. What is your long-term vision? I covered some of that. I mean, what is our long-term vision? And I talked a bit about e-com and the incremental steps. In terms of personal long-term vision for the business and the company, as I mentioned, it's now 24 years, and there are hopefully many more years to come. And I've seen, being in the business for 13, roughly half that time, now I have seen, it benefits so many people over the years. Like many people have and experienced and come into financial freedom, which has drastically changed their lives and their families' lives. And this is obviously, I cannot take any credit for this. Is all down to my parents and our CEO Money, and obviously many of the leaders who have brought this type of financial freedom to so many people and families, and obviously in reward for their contributions and performance. And if anything, my long-term vision is able to ensure that continues, and it happens for many more people. I can't. All I can do is focus on the things, like I said, in my control, and I think that will happen over a period of time. And so I can have that kind of contribution in many other people's lives like they did. So that is kind of a vision I came to recently, because I felt that was more valuable than some kind of sales target or number of countries or orders. Because when that happens, obviously because it is a result of rewarding people for contribution and performance, which will be because of incremental improvements and change and performance and growth and so on. So I think that is something that I have come into envisioning for the future. Next question, life ambition. I guess that's kind of it again. How do you plan to manage your priorities, both personally and professionally? I don't know if I should give personal advice on how to manage priorities, but professionally, it's also asked, is this a skill you're born with or inspired? Professionally, for sure, it is an ongoing learning process. I am not very sure I'm great at it, but I'm trying. Anybody who's seen my inbox notifications or inbox unread list will know that it is not being managed, and they have to call me up and tell me that, by the way, you got to reply to that email. How do you plan to manage it? I mean, this is a work in progress. Personal. Who's your favorite cartoon character? Favorite cartoon character definitely has to be somebody from South Park, like Cartman, because he's eternally hilarious, or Stewie and Peter Griffin from Family Guy, just so hilarious. So favorite, they'll be my favorites. Personal. How can you manage without a PC? So most people who know me know that I rarely, if ever, use a laptop. Completely on my mobile. One of the reasons I can do this is because of I obviously don't need to use the ERP, like our systems, to make any entries, so I never have to do that. A lot of our reports are now automated, so I can get that information if I need any specific. There's a lot of people who help me get it, and there is a big convenience factor with just doing everything on mobile. So it's easy to manage because of my role, and I just got more used to even now using Excel spreadsheets on mobile, and I think it's the way forward anyway, depending on your role, especially with 5G coming in. Hopefully I'll be ahead of the curve. And so it's not a skill, but that's how I manage it. Biggest challenges, I mentioned one big challenge. Then what magazines and books have you read recently? I only really got into reading about 4 years ago, and try to read a few books a year. So recently, after I read a few books, I tried audiobooks. So the last audiobook I heard was, I think it's Can't Hurt Me No More or something. Anyway, the author is David Goggins, very inspirational story about ex-Navy SEAL who's done many difficult endurance runs. So David Goggins, his last book, I think it's Can't Hurt Us or something like that. And that was the last audiobook I listened to. Prior to that, I read also the book The Big Short, which is also based on a great movie about the 2008 financial crisis, directed by Adam McKay, Steve Carell, a lot of good actors, Ryan Gosling. So that is an amazing movie with amazing dialogue, but about very complex financial dialogue. And I read the book. It is even more interesting about how mad the financial world is. So that was another really good book. Last one is Shoe Dog, story of the Nike story from the point of view of Phil Knight. And especially it talks only about, like, I think really the first 15, 20 years in what is probably a 50-year-old company now. So really the early years. Where do you watch Bollywood movies? No, I don't watch any Bollywood movies. I watched a lot of Hollywood movies. I love movies, and but I really don't like most of the movies that come out nowadays. So I don't watch a lot of them. It's very rare. The golden age of cinema, I think, is over. Like there's a big controversial comment from Martin Scorsese, one of the best directors. He said about how all these superhero movies are spoiling cinema and ruining cinema. I think he's right. I only really watched the movies, the Batman movie, the Christopher Nolan Batman movies, and then by the time Batman and Superman were throwing each other through buildings, I said, this is enough. This is an interesting one. I wish to know about your development in personal as well as business, and how did you cross out all your negatives? I didn't cross out all my negatives. The way I like to think about it is that for sure, like, I'm not perfect or anything, but like I have been trying to improve my self-awareness about what are my strengths and weaknesses, and what maybe some people see as weakness as a negative, but and I'm just trying to be more conscious about my weakness and how people who are better at them can help me or educate me about them. But I try to go all in on my positives, whether that be inquisitiveness to learn about the industry, about the products, get into the minute minutiae of the details of how it is done and how it can be done, especially from a point of view of the supply chain. So I always tell people, like, when it comes to all these sign materials, all my knowledge is theoretical. I have no practical knowledge with it. It is really just theoretical information. Most of it I've been able to memorize. So that is, I guess, a positive. So I try to go all in with that. And then there are negatives with, this sitting and talking to a camera is something I would never have done. So I guess with practice, I try to work on it. Public speaking, very bad at it, but I have managed by attempting to do it at multiple times. But definitely much better than when I started. I remember one of my first sales meetings, somebody asked a difficult question, my hand was like shaking, and it probably looked pretty bad when I answered that difficult question. So yeah, that's the work in progress on the weaknesses, and try to go all in on the strengths. Who is your role model and why? I definitely don't have one role model. I try to have many role models. Definitely my parents have been role models in different aspects of my life. Money has been a big role model in many aspects of my business life. Externally, somebody once said, because of the internet today, you can outsource all your role models. Basically, you have access to all the information they put out. You can learn about so much about what they did, their experiences, and their positives and negatives. So externally, I mentioned at the start of the video, when it comes to marketing, for sure, Gary Vaynerchuk has been a big role model, inspiration. When it comes to business and innovation in business, for sure, Amazon comes to like Bezos, especially when it comes to customer obsession and day one philosophy. When it comes to business, who else? Yeah, these are some prime examples. I tend to, it's David Goggins is a big inspiration, definitely in terms of mental fortitude and what you're really capable of. They vary, not just business, not just personal development, but a number of them. I try to capture the things I can relate to most from them, and how I can adopt some of that magic. At least if I get 1% from everybody, or 0.5%, it's a lot from each person, that is. Personal question. What is your favorite muscle group to work out? This is obviously from a gym rat. I definitely don't have a favorite muscle group to work out, but I like exercise and working out. Try to do general, all full body type workouts, different movements. If I had to choose a particular muscle group, I would say back for sure, because if it's when I do work it out, and growing up I always had very bad posture. My head was basically looking at the floor all the time. So eventually, when I strengthened my back and worked on my back, I don't know, it just feels like I feel taller. I feel like good posture feels great. So back is a good one, and it's impressive to do. It feels impressive even to me if I can do a couple of pull-ups in a row. So pull-ups is a good one. Favorite quote you live by? I don't really. Again, it's kind of like role models. I just pick them up as they go along. I don't really have anything I live by. So what's the single most important business tip which you learned from your parents? Different tips for sure. From my mother, the emphasis on hard work and being reliable and taking on responsibility. From my father, the importance of numbers and financial responsibility. I don't know, somehow from a young age, you always said that to me. It's so important to learn about numbers in the business and accounting, for example. That's why subconsciously I went into do accounting and finance. He didn't really push me. I went in to do it, and I found out I hated it, accounting, from a perspective of having to do that kind of a job every day, just for me personally. But at the same time, I picked up enough about it that it definitely carried on for many years to have a good grasp on the financial, understanding the financial health of a company, understanding balance sheets, P&Ls, costings, doing calculations quickly. That has definitely something that he has given me, and courage. He's given me he has been extremely courageous, like I mentioned in the early days of the business, having the mental strength and courage to go through, try different things on and on and on, in spite of continuous failure. This is something that he has passed on. I've learned from him. I can't say passed on. I still have to see if I can be as courageous as him. So that's the... This is the middle, just again a comment. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to work with Blue Rhine, a company who always takes care of their employees. Thank you, Blue Rhine, for everything. Personal. So, last personal question. I skipped it from the beginning. I leave it to the end. When will you be company CEO? This is funnily enough, our CEO Mani asked me this at least once or twice every year for the past 2 years, and I honestly don't want him to. He's such a great CEO and a mentor that, and he is so. I was talking about the strengths and weaknesses. All my weak areas are kind of not seen because of him in the background, him doing a lot of the things he does. Running an organization this size, I'm only doing sales and product management. I have definitely some interaction with finance or purchase or inventory, but being a CEO, having to have entire purview of an entire organization it takes a lot of skill, and I hope that in the future I will be able to do that at the right time. But at the same time, there are significant things that I'm working on, whether it be e-com or marketing related or product related, which do already take up some of my time, and for me to really, so maybe in some time, but the ideal situation would be to find the CEO from within the company or externally if we have to, somebody who can might be able to do a better job than me. That would be the ideal, looking at it from today's standpoint. So it is not something that's on my mind, and I hope I hope we can find a great CEO from within, because Mani asked me that at least once or twice a year, and because he's been CEO for some time, I'm sure he wants to do more interesting things, even staying connected to the company in an advisory role or executive role, board role, and we'll have to wait and see how that turns out. But for the time being, I'm quite busy with the things on my plate. Yeah. Another question is, of all the brands in Blue Rhine, which is my favorite? On a day-to-day basis, for sure, I have to spend most of my time on the newer brands, whether it's related to the printers or digital signage. I spend most of my time on them because we have great product managers and product team and sales team who focus on a lot of the other early products. So, but my favorite brand would have to be Year Long, because that is kind of set the foundation and kind of a blueprint for the long term of what is the ideal situation or scenario in terms of growth, healthy long-term business, creating a brand. Year Long, as I mentioned, when Mani and my dad joined together in the start with acrylic, that was our first product, Year Long. That was our first brand, and they used to tell me stories about how back then, like 98, 99, they'd go to Taiwan to meet, to see to the factory, to have business discussions and such, and back then, and if you've been to that part of Taiwan, it looks sometimes like some parts of India. It's an industrial city, not very well developed except for factories, and this is Kaohsiung. And they go to Taipei, take like an overnight bus to there, and just that romanticism of early entrepreneurship and what it takes to get something going was what they did was incredible, and what it led to, and creating one of the oldest and most recognized brands in acrylic, and probably the longest. Or the most well-known acrylic in the entire region, for sure. With Year Long, we have done that, and gradually over a period of time, with most of the brands we get to be associated with it as longer and longer. That happens in those categories. So that'll be my favorite. And eventually, when I joined the business and I would go to Taiwan, 13, 14, 15 years later, when they made those first trips, it was completely changed. So like if I could fly into Taipei, and there would be now an overnight train which will take you to Kaohsiung in hour and a half, 2 hours, with a high-speed train. So, when I got into it, it obviously became a lot easier compared to what they had to go through. And it is still one of the most biggest associations. Eventually, like I said, we got other brands, whether they be Astari or Intercoat, or I don't want to say more names, but many other names which over a period of time and will become well-known brands in the region. So the first one has to be the favorite. Long answer, but hopefully that was good insight and good insight into me and the future visions of the company. This is a great way to give you some of our feedback, and also put out information about what direction we're looking at, the management is looking at, and the company is looking at forward with all the new investments, new developments we're doing. We want to make this at least happen on a more regular basis. In the future, we will put out, probably in the link in this description or somewhere, we will have a public form for our customers to put out questions. Again, I hope they can be related to our business or sign making or anything related to the business that you think I might be able to give my opinion and feedback on. Please use that link, send your questions, and at a later date I will sit down and try to answer them as best as I can. So that brings the end of the first Ask Anand V show. Thank you very much if you've been sitting this long, and hopefully you'll watch the next one too. Bye.